I had no interest in writing the long run. I had no interest in writing about sobriety or recovery or, that transformation in my life. And, my editor, David Blum, sort of tasked me with it. And I was like, dude, I'm not going to do that. I was like, I hate all the, those sort of like crystal waving new age narratives about how I changed my life and you can too. And he was like, no, I'm not telling you to do that. Be yourself and just tell it the way you would tell it. This is a thing that happened in your life. Just tell us what happened, And so I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. And I was like, I'm just going to describe my ugly life in great detail and just talk about the gritty process of like getting my shit together. And the only way that I could trick myself into being that honest for that long was Dave and I have a great friendship. And the only way I could fool myself into doing it was telling myself, I'm just sending this to Dave. He's just going to read it. That's it. It's just he and I. It's a confidential, conversation. And so I sent him this private story full of my secrets, and he sent it out to the world.
That was Mishka Shubaly, and this is the Yogi Triathlete Podcast. The YTP is sponsored by Health IQ, a life insurance agency that uses science and data to secure lower rates on life insurance for health-conscious people, including runners, cyclists, yogis, vegans, and more. 56% of Health IQ customers save between 4 and 33% on their life insurance. We always say, do the work for the sake of the work and not the reward. But that's not to say if there is something good for us in the end that we should walk away from it. So go to healthiq.com/YTP to support the show and see if you qualify. Episode 89 of the pod showing up for you today. I'm Jess, your host, and this is the place where we share the stories of people looking, finding, and living their purpose. Would our guest today agree that he's living his purpose? Well, I'm not sure about that, but he is certainly our guest today because in our eyes, his perfectly played out, dirty, and I mean messy path has led him to critically acclaimed creativity, which he shares through his writing, performances, and teaching. I would say that smells like a divine blueprint of purpose. Mishka Shubaly is a self-proclaimed mannish boy who may appear rough around the edges with his deep sandpaper-like voice, but I can assure you that I felt something very soft and limitless while in his company. A for sure rebel, Mishka lived a reckless life while alcohol and drug abuse consumed him for decades until one day when he saw the vastness of his future turning into a narrow crevasse. Without the assistance of AA, he turned in his low-vibe, medicated life for the state of sobriety he lives today. Although he spends most of his nights expressing his art in alcohol-filled venues, this guy has an unshakable will that is no doubt fueled by his remembrance of living out a hell on earth. His road to health appears very well paved, and with the addition of a plant-based diet to his list of things that I do that are good for me, he has improved his blood work numbers greatly in a short period of time. Mishka is the best-selling author of 6 Kindle singles and his most recent full-length memoir, I Swear I'll Make It Up to You. But he is so much more than that, and we cover so much in this conversation, including the moment when he realized he was an alcoholic, to what it means to be a man, to the window of contemplation he finds when running long, and how adopting a better way of life is shifting his position within the writing world. I think you're going to enjoy this pod today. Thank you for your support of the show. Yogi Triathlete Holistic Performance is on a mission to create a better world by assisting those who are ready to wake up and kick ass. This tribe grows stronger every week, and we thank you for all the emails and messages sharing how you are making positive changes in your life. The Yogi Triathlete Cookbook, High Vibe Recipes for the Athlete Appetite, has flown off our shelves. We are currently out of stock for signed copies, but it is available on Amazon, so please use the Amazon banner ad in the accompanying blog post for this show or at yogitriathlete.com/shop. It doesn't cost you a thing, but it throws us some dimes to keep the lights on. We're loving all the food pics from the cookbook, so please #Yogi Triathlete Cookbook and we'll get you featured on our social channels. If you enjoyed today's show, please leave a review on Apple Podcast. We are giving away 3 pairs of 2XU compression run socks, and I just have to say that these babies make going long that much more enjoyable. All right, are you guys ready? Let's do it. I give to you our convo with best-selling author, ultra runner, musician, sober lifer, and van-obsessed dude who has been described as a beaming ray of jet black sunshine, Mishka Shubaly. That was All right, so let's just dive right into the plant-based stuff because you're recent.
Yeah.
As you're mowing on a sweet potato, straight up.
Not cooked? Cooked?
We just got home, whatever, an hour and a half ago, and I had phone calls and emails to do, and then I realized like I hadn't eaten, and I was like, I know I'm going to get hungry, and I went to my sister's fridge, and there was cooked sweet potato in there, which is funny because that's my go-to at home is to just have some cooked sweet potatoes in the fridge. And yeah, you don't need to do anything to them.
No,
they're ready.
I had the same experience before we were coming here. I was like, oh, I'm going to be hungry, but I don't feel like making a spinach salad and all this stuff. So I grabbed an avocado and threw some nutritional yeast and some hemp seeds and a little bit of salt and some turmeric, because turmeric on everything for us. Yeah. And it was so good. And you're just eating it. Like, you don't need a plate, right? Yeah. It's got the perfect package. So it's funny too, the way that the people think about food though, is that I was like eating a potato in the van and some woman pulled up at a stoplight and saw me and looked away horrified. like I'd been playing with myself or something. I was like, no, this is actually food. It's not like I'm eating, a Big Mac or something like that. But if you had a Big Mac, well, if it was us, we might look at you a little horrified. All right, yeah. No, but Georgia, not California. We can't with our Yogi license plates. You cannot be a jerk in the car at all. You got to be like fully accepting all the time. There are some times when I'm driving, and we were talking before we put the mics on about how, that East Coast edge doesn't leave you. And there's a couple times in the car, I'm trying to get to yoga and I feel the rage start to build, and I'm like, you've committed your whole life to Yogi Triathlete. You have Yogi Tri license plates. Like, girl, you got to do the work right now. Like, right now, you got to live the part. Yeah. You got to show up. Well, let's talk about that stuff. Let's talk about that, because I think this is one of the reasons why it took me so long to come around to eating a plant-based diet, is because, my background is basically being a music fan, being, punk rock and roll, the whole sort of sleazy rock and roll lifestyle, hedonism, drugs, alcohol. I miss smoking cigarettes, and I had so much resistance about eating, a plant-based diet because, number one, there's so much hatred towards vegans. And number two, a lot of it is deserved. Whenever I'm on the road, people are like, oh, well, let's go to this, vegan restaurant or whatever. And it's $19 for 6 Brussels sprouts. Mm-hmm. I'm 220 pounds. I can't live like that. And it's, and it's a joke, and it's, I think it's an insult to working people. And, and I think that's sort of the lens that I see everything through in the world is, money, capitalism, how working people get by from day to day, because that's been the overarching concern of my life, but, I gotta give, big ups to, to Rich Roll, because, one of the things that he made me realize, and I took as long to realize this as possible, is that you don't have to be a bougie, elite, snobby vegan, that you can just eat your lentils and eat your beans and eat your greens and I never got the slightest amount of judgment or impatience from Rich with the way I was eating. It was just like, oh, that's what you do. That's not what I do. And he just he just waited for me to come around.
super grateful to him for that. I mean, and also, I mean, the other thing too, like, let's be honest about it, like what finally made me take the plunge was I went to the doctor this year and he was like, "You are not well." And I was like, "But I'm healthier than all my friends." And he was like, "Well, you're not healthy."
What prompted you to go to the doctor? Was there anything that prompted the visit?
I turned 40. That was one thing. And also for the last 18 months, I had wanted to die like every single day, just feeling like garbage. And one of the things I found out when I went was I was pre-diabetic, high blood sugar, low testosterone. My doctor said, "You have the testosterone of a 70-year-old man."
So you're feeling pretty good about yourself.
I was like, "Thanks, dude. Thanks."
You're like, I wonder if that's going to be a motivator for change.
Yeah. High cholesterol and vitamin D deficient. And I just went back to my doctor and lost between 20 and 25 pounds. My vitamin D came up. My cholesterol went down, my testosterone came up, and my blood sugar went down. So every single one of those 4 health conditions corrected itself over 6 months.
Yeah, this is going to ask
of eating correctly, taking vitamins and supplements, and exercising.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, Rich was the good angel, of like, this is sort of a better way to live. But people don't listen to their better angels. I mean, we've been telling people forever, plastic bags are horrible for the environment. You need to stop using them. And people are like, yeah, whatever, man. Okay, now the plastic bags are going to cost a nickel. Fuck, I'm going to start bringing my own, grocery bags, and that's what people listen to, And
I think that when we talk about like change, you got to get to a point, like when people say to me, they talk to us a lot about, people that they know or family members. Oh, they're so unhealthy. I just don't know what to do. How can I make them change? And I'm like, you can't make them change. They haven't changed because their life it's not crappy enough yet. Like, it's not like they haven't heard that news that takes their life down to the level where they're like, okay, this has got to change. And I went through major transformation in my life because pain was a huge motivator. I was miserable. I was angry. I was all these different things. And I was like, God, there's got to be a better way to live. There's got to be a better way to live.
Yeah.
And it wasn't so much, I guess it was health, but it was more of just the way that I moved through the world was so much effort, so much pain, so much conflict, so much like I was just a verbal jouster. Like I would just joust until I was the last man standing. And that's just exhausting. And for what? Right? Like for what? People like Rich, and I don't know him personally, like people like BJ and I, it's a constant practice because it is a practice. I'm not going to say we're perfect. It's a practice of really like meeting people where they're at and understand that people are going to change when they're ready to change. And so all we can do is live the example. And being like a meat shamer and protests and like being an angry vegan is not the way we approach it. But that doesn't mean that there's moments where I'm in the airport and I'm like, because we got into it for health and performance, right? Mm-hmm. So that's easy. Like you can see how quickly your body can change.
Yeah.
But now we've been vegan since 2011. Now we know all about the animals and all the shit that goes down. And being, yogis really like living from that perspective and that philosophy and those principles, there's this ahimsa, this nonviolence. And so I see the torture and just the horror. And that doesn't mean that when I see people eating this way or mothers feeding their infants cow's milk, that I don't like get this feeling of rage. Of course I do, but it's like you got to recognize that on the spot and realize that if I'm here trying to live this life of being nonviolent, well, that's freaking violent if I'm going out there and shaming people for what they're doing and how they're living their lives. Who am I to say what's right for them?
I have had this ongoing conversation with a really good friend of mine who plays in this, super loud, sort of noisy death rock band. And he's been sober for a long time. And he knew that I was an open champion for the restorative powers of mushrooms and other psychedelic drugs. And also that I figured out that I was unhealthy and that I needed to embrace plant-based whole foods. And so he finally ate mushrooms, and then he called me a couple of days later and he was like, man, I had this epiphany, you know, that like, I'm going hardcore vegan, you know, because I realized that like, you know, it's murder and that it's torture and that it's, you know, it's totally unethical. And I just feel like I need to spread the word and tell everyone. And I said, well, good luck, because man, pick up a newspaper. Like, the world has sent a message that they're okay with slavery and they're okay with torture and they're okay with murder of human beings and other animals. And I don't think, you know, and you know, I've told him that I don't think that he's going to convert a lot of people by having these protracted ethical conversations with them unless they bring that up first. Because if you try and sway someone with that, I find usually that they just dig their heels in.
Yeah, they run in the
Digging
opposite
deeper.
direction.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what I found too. You know, there's organizations who are, you know, PETA, been doing it for a long time and they are edgy. Like, they will push it to the
Yeah.
limit, and some people respond to that. I think it's a very small percentage.
I think they do more harm than they do good.
Yeah, I think it's a really small
Because
percentage.
as soon as you tell someone that you're vegan, they're like, "Oh, you're one of those." And it's like, no, those.
Yeah.
Listen, radical Christians, radical Muslims, radical animal rights activists, they're all shitty people. Like, when you take extremism in any form, I mean, unless it's like whatever, extreme compassion or something like that. When you take that to that attracts unstable people, in my experience.
Yeah.
You know, and it's people who want, who seek conflict and want drama, and often are more, you know, they embrace a doctrine as a means of finding power for themselves because they feel weak in their own lives. You know, I get, you know, my mother's family is hardcore Catholic. And so they always want to talk to me about, you know, religion and politics. And I'm like, nah, I love you. I accept that we have differences in opinions, and I don't want to fight with you. So, like, let's talk about the weather. Let's talk about what you did this year, how your summer was, how the crops are doing, whatever, anything but that. Because I'm not going to sway them. They're not going to sway me, you know? Let's just agree to enjoy each other's company.
Right. And if you can't find a common ground within religion or veganism or whatever, if you can't find a common ground within it, then just talk about something else that you can agree upon, because it's a waste of energy. And so, you know, but just like me not running up to the mother who's feeding cow's milk and being like, do you realize that a mother's baby was stolen? So you know, I mean, for me to do that isn't that kind of the same thing as me to say, you're an angry vegan and you shouldn't be an angry vegan. I think that if we can fall into whatever role that is, that feels aligned with what our goals are. Like, you wanted to improve your health, and you're taking it really simple. Like, you're just eating sweet potatoes, or I'm just eating avocados, or we put a really simple cookbook together. I think when you find that niche for yourself, that if you can just grow within that and live that example, it doesn't have to mirror anybody else's. People will take notice. The people who are ready for change will take notice. Just same thing with in sobriety, right? Like,
yeah, you know, one of my greatest influences for getting sober was a friend of mine who was in another, like, noisy death rock band. And, you know, and we worked at this club together, and he was always, like, in better shape than I was, like, looked better than I did, dated hotter girls, you know, and he never said anything to me about how I was living or what I was doing, you know. And then finally I was like, you know, like, what am I doing wrong? Or like, what are you doing right? Why are our lives so different? And he was like, well, you know, I don't do these things that you do, you know. And he used to, you know, smoke crack and inject cough syrup and just, you know, do all kinds of garbage. And, but he never ever told me you should do this or you ought to do this, or he was never trying to sell me on anything. He just like, he was just a good friend to me and waited for me to ask him, waited for me to come to my senses. And then, you know, and that's been one of the most enduring friendships in my life. And like, whenever I'm sort of in trouble now, or I don't know what to do, he's one of the first people I call. But all the people who are like, you need to get sober, I just cut them out of my life, you know? And, I take a lot of shit from people about my writing that, you know, that, your work is narcissistic. It's narrowly focused on your own life and your own problems and your own issues. And you never say, you know, well, this is what we can do as humanity to move forward. Or, you know, you don't volunteer to work with other addicts or whatever. Yeah, I'm not a leader. I'm not a politician. I'm not a spiritual leader. I'm not a religious leader. We're sitting in the back of my van.
We are.
I'm a guy. I'm a dude. I still transact on Craigslist all the time. You know, I'm just a guy, and I don't have a religious manifesto to sell anybody. I want you to read my writing for entertainment, and hopefully like you'll get something out of it. Hopefully it'll make you laugh. You'll feel something. Maybe you'll learn something out of it. But I'm not trying to sell anybody on a certain, you know, particular way to live. For me to claim to have some universal wisdom, men are like this, women are like this. No, I don't know. I know it's taken me, I'm 40, it's taken me this long to figure out a quarter of my own life. And I'm happy to share with you the things that I've found that have solved, you know, problems in my own life. But it's up to you to decide whether that works for you or not. You're a human being. You have your owner's manual. You have your own authority to decide what's right for you and what's not. I'm not going to tell anybody what to do.
I think it's really helpful to share your experience. I think it's helpful because it's so truthful. You know, it's coming from the trials and tribulations that you've had. And when I say you, I mean like all of us that are living in this way, and opening up and saying, you know, this is how it used to be for me. Like I used to punch myself in the arm because I had so much rage and anger in me. Like it's just crazy. Like, and I haven't fully disclosed all the crazy stuff because nobody knows how crazy I was except for me. And we are an enclosed van. I hope you feel safe. But what I'm getting at is that, like, I get it. Like, when somebody says, like, I can't sleep at night, or I can't meditate, I can't do that, or what can I expect? Like, I get you. Like, I get you. I used to be that. All I can do is speak from what has worked for me, because I don't think there is an owner's manual for any of us. And what I've learned through the 80 whatever sessions we've done on this show is that everybody's vocabulary to describe their experiences varies a little bit. But if we were to boil down what the essence of the struggle is, they're exact.
Yeah. I think a lot of it is the engagement or participation, or, so if you listen to an audiobook or if you watch TV, you soak up some of that experience, but mostly it's just like it's washing past you. But if you read a book, that's an active experience. Like, you know, to listen to an audiobook, you sort of just sit there, you know. To actually read a book, your eyes are doing work, your brain is doing work, you're sort of filling in those gaps. You know, if this is the worst, most banal example, but let's go with this. A rose, you know, it's pretty, but the thorns can stick you. You'll automatically come up with, oh man, that's like life. That's like love. That's like my mother-in-law. You automatically supply the analogy, the greater meaning. If I were to tell you, love is like a rose, it's like, man,
surface. It's so surface.
Well, it's surface, and also it's it's just washing over you. You're
Right.
not active. You're not participating. If I just tell someone in great detail about my life, about my struggle with alcoholism, about my fears and my failures and waking up in my own urine, then a lot of times they'll be like, man, I did that too, or I still do that, and, instead of trying to say, here's some universal truth, it's better for me to just describe my own experience in great detail, totally open, totally honest, and let them do the work.
Yes, because they have to do the work,
Experience it
and
themselves. Mm-hmm.
yeah, and that goes right along with you can't change anyone, right? Like you can't change anyone. They have to have the motivation to change, and they have to do the work. And if we were to look at it from a yogic philosophy, it's actually really violating to step in and say you're not living the way that you should live, and you should live this way, because you're not allowing them to fully go down and exhaust that path that they're on. And you're saying that I don't trust you as a human being to live your life the way that you were here to live it. And for me, like a huge thing when I went fully vegan was that I started to lose the anger, and I started to lose the anxiety, and I started to lose the fear. Now I understand the correlation I've made is that I was ingesting that of the animals and all of that. But like, I can speak to that from my experience. Like, oh, you don't sleep at night. Well, this helped. Like, it changed me. Mm-hmm. But maybe it wouldn't work for somebody else. But it's, I think, speaking from your own experience, because you've done the work.
Yeah.
Like, you're not just talking about being sober, but you're still drinking.
Yeah.
You've done the work. And actually, what I want to move into is you're saying, like, sharing this open and honest. So you're the author of The Long Run.
Yes.
Which was huge Kindle single.
Yeah.
Big. You had to just like puke it all in there, right? Like, how was that the first time that you started to crack the vault for others to see what was in it?
It's funny because that was my second Kindle single, and the first one I wrote about was about getting shipwrecked, and that was a big hit. And then my editor was like, "Oh, you have to tell this story about how you were a druggie." And
that's such an 80s term, druggie. We had a whole druggie parking lot. That's the druggie parking lot.
It is. It's that antiquated term is totally correct for who I was and what I was.
Druggie.
I remember I was working for this contractor in upstate New York, and I sort of like had to drop something off at his house, and I went and knocked on the door, and his like 8-year-old daughter opened the door and said, "Are you a druggie?" I was like, yes, I am.
Why did she say that to you?
Because I look like a druggie, man.
And she was just honest.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So when I had no interest in writing The Long Run. I had no interest in writing about sobriety or recovery or, that transformation in my life. And my editor, David Blum, sort of tasked me with it. And I was like, dude, I'm not going to do that. I was like, I hate all the, those sort of like crystal waving new age narratives about how I changed my life, and you can too. And he was like, no, I'm not telling you to do that. Be yourself and just tell it the way you would tell it. This is a thing that happened in your life. Just tell us what happened, And so I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. And I was like, I'm just going to describe my ugly life in great detail and just talk about the gritty process of like getting my shit together. And the only way that I could trick myself into being that honest for that long was Dave and I have a great friendship. And the only way I could fool myself into doing it was telling myself, I'm just sending this to Dave. He's just going to read it. That's it. It's just he and I. It's a confidential, conversation. And so I sent him this private story full of my secrets, and he sent it out to the world.
He was like, it's great. You're like, for sure he's going to come back with all these edits.
And I was convinced that was the end of my career as a writer. And I was like, this is it. I'm just going to alienate everyone and fuck it. I don't care because I've carried this secret for so long. And it's funny, when I finished the story, I was like, oh man, this must be a little bit like what it's like to be gay and come out of the closet. Because I was like, this has had so much power over me. And then now finally I'm like, yeah, fuck it, I'm gay. Like, I don't care. And then, of course, the long run was bigger than any other story I'd ever, published with them. So I don't know at this point.
You're putting yourself out there. Like, it's like the most pivotal, like most unworthiness thing. Like, you just keep it in. And then when you make that big leap of like, here it all is. And you kind of have that, and see what you're doing. You're in the back of your mind. You're like, well, he's probably going to do something, but it's just a story between him and me. And you put everything on the line. That's actually when amazing things happen.
Yeah. I was talking to a friend of mine about this. He's working on a book now, and we were hanging out, and he was like, he's like, oh, that was the year I had my spiritual awakening, and my ears sort of pricked up, and I was like, tell me about that. And he was like, well, this isn't going to go in the book, but, and proceeded to tell me a story that was like, I got like goosebumps all over my body listening to him tell this story. And I thought I was going to cry. I thought I was going to get sick. And then, and then he finished and looked at me, and I was like, dude, that's gotta go in the fucking book. Are you kidding? And for him, it was too revealing, too vulnerable, too naked. And I was like, that's the shit, man. That's what
people want to see.
Yeah, that's what we're here for.
That's what's going to say to people, like, okay, I'm not alone. And that's a huge motivator for change. Like, I'm not alone. Like, I can get out of this.
Yeah.
And I would imagine that it's not the people like BJ and I that are going to read it, that you don't even, at the time didn't even know who we were. But it's like your mom, your right, God, yeah. Like your friends, like the people close to you that maybe didn't know, like because nobody knows, like I said earlier, nobody knows the darkness as dark as you did.
Yeah, it's and and that was brutal sometimes, because there were a bunch of my friends who sort of came to me after I wrote that and published it, and they were like, dude, we had no idea it was that bad. And I was like, yeah, no, that was the point, is I'm good at hiding shit. I was good at concealing it from you. But also there was, I was in a band with some friends of mine, and my, our singer's cousin would come to see us play, and she was a publicist for some bigger authors. And, so I'd sort of met her in a cursory manner several times over the years. And then when the long run came out, she read it, and I saw her at a show, and she looked at me and she was like, I don't know what to say to you. And I was like, what? I'm sorry. Like, whatever it is, I don't, and she said, no, I just thought that you were this like drunken lummox. And she said, I had no idea that you had this internal life, because you never betrayed that you were intelligent at all. The entire time that I've known you, you were just the guy sitting at the bar. And I was like, well, yeah, I mean, I was like fucking doing construction and shit, like
it's like anything but to live who you fully are.
Yeah. Well, and to
like all that stuff is just it just lowers your ceiling on your potential.
It was, I mean, I spent, way too long working in bars in New York, and like we'd always have really rude patrons, say horrible shit to you when you're bartending or busting their glasses or, checking their IDs or whatever. And, there would always be people who were like, I'll have I have my master's degree. And it's like, no, don't fucking say that. That just makes it worse. Like, if you have your master, what are you doing working here, you jerk? Or like, just, and for me, it was just like, just play dumb, just keep your head down and just get out of the situation, whatever it is, But yeah, I mean, I hid so much of myself. And then it was tremendously liberating when, when I just came out and I was like, yeah, no, I'm an alcoholic and I have been for a long time, and I'm done.
And we've listened to, your full story on Rich Roll, and it was messy.
Oh, yeah.
You were super messy.
Yeah, I mean, that, alcoholism by nature is messy. Well, and the other thing is, I, like anybody else, I read, and I've experienced these, narratives, and I absolutely know alcoholics who have had that like thunderclap of, like an epiphany, and I never drank again. It's not how it was for me.
Yeah,
it's not how it was for most of my friends.
What did yours, like, what was the precursor to you becoming sober?
Well, I mean,
and were there fallbacks from that sobriety? Like, were you like, okay, I'm going to do it, and then for a little while, and then fell back?
When I was 17, I figured out that I was an alcoholic. I was like riding the bus in Colorado, and I was like, I've gone too deep into this now. That like I was hungover and I had, an inch and a half of whiskey left in the plastic bottle in the, in my basement, and even feeling mortally wounded by liquor, thinking about that made my mouth water. And I was like, oh shit, I was sort of just fooling around and I'm stuck, and I was like, I'm going to have to quit drinking. And sure enough, 15 short years later, yeah, I had a lot more drinking to do before.
You had to
find your bottom.
exhaust.
Yeah.
You had to exhaust the path. Mm-hmm. And I think that great healing comes from exhausting the path. And to go back to what I was saying, like this, and this can be construed in such a incorrect way, and so however people construe it doesn't matter to me, but it's these like interventions, like we're here because we love you and we're going to intervene and you're going to get sober now. Well, if that person's not ready, they have not exhausted that path, it is not a sustainable change for them. Whether you strap them in the car and drive them to the rehab, it's rarely, it's like the angry vegan. I think for a very, very small population of people would that ever work.
My greatest fear is becoming a parent, and now I'm going to tell everybody how to be a parent. If you fear that your 26-year-old son has a drinking problem, kick him the fuck out of your house. What is a 26-year-old doing living with their parents unless they're disabled in some way? There's no reason for your kid to be living with you when they're 26. I'll get the 22, 23, 24-year-old guys who email me and they're like, I got to quit drinking. And I'm like, okay, let's talk about this. And generally what they mean is I've got to quit getting in trouble for drinking, or I've got to quit getting hangovers. They don't want to quit drinking because they know how to quit drinking. You don't drink. And you don't need to write to me to find out how to do that. You just don't drink. Or I'll have, people in their 50s write to me and say, my son or my daughter is drinking, and they ask for my help and, how to get them better. And I always ask, how old they are. And if they're 22, 23, 24, I generally say it's probably not going to work. I hope it does. And, I know, people who have quit from at 24, at 22, at 18, at 14, and who have been successful with it. But by and large, people really have to screw up a lot for a long time before they're ready to change. And more often than not, when I probe a little bit about the parents with the kid in their mid to late 20s who can't get their shit together, they say, well, we're ready to take, big steps. And I was like, well, what are those big steps? Well, we told him we're going to stop paying for his cell phone. Bullshit. Like
if that's considered to be a big step,
yeah,
we gotta back up the truck.
I was working full time when I was 17 years old. Not every kid should do that or needs to do that, but if you're 20, 21, 22 living at home, you better be going to college and you better be doing well at college. And I don't know. A lot of times I think it's a combination of people being unwilling to take responsibility in their own lives and parents or loved ones who enable them to not take any responsibility. The opposite of addiction is responsibility.
Huge. Do you feel like you were enabled?
Yeah.
But you were pretty independent. Like you just said, you were working or no? I can't read your face.
Yeah. I mean, the answer is all of the above. My dad sort of ignored me. My mom, it was, when I'm 6'5", I've been this big since I was 15. My nephew, he's 15, he's 6'7". When I was living at home when I was a kid and she was like, you're not going out tonight. I was like, you're wrong. And when your kid's 15, you can't throw them out. She couldn't force me to stay home. You know what I mean? So that was a real conundrum for her. And it was a difficult situation, and her solution was to be permissive, and say, well, just like, as long as you're at home,
I can't even imagine how difficult it is for a mother, like that mother's love, that mama bear, and I've seen it very close to me. Just the blind eye that almost it almost has to be there because it's, I don't know, man, that would take some major cojones to any mother to put down the hammer.
Yeah, no, I do feel terrible for the shit that I pulled on her, and I always will. But
but she'll love you no matter what. She's your mom.
And I got in an argument with some of my family the other day, and my mom was like, are you mad at me? And I was like, yeah, I'm totally mad at you. But if you hit a pedestrian, I'll help you bury the body. Like, you're my mom, I'm angry at you, but I'm like, I'll still do anything for you. Or,
So you were drinking at the age of 50 so I still want to go back and find out what like the breaking point was to get to the sobriety, but let's start with the first time you cracked a drink. Like, do you remember that?
Oh yeah. No, it was I remember the first time I got drunk was with one of my sister's boyfriends, and we went out by the railroad tracks, and some Budweiser tall boys, and it was amazing. It was it was totally magical. I was like, oh, I feel okay. I feel like myself, for the first time in my life, and you're wincing at that.
No, because I've so been there. I've so been there. Like, oh my God, this makes me feel, for me, it was pot. Like, I loved to smoke. It made me feel like I was a writer. I could write when I was high. I could be funny when I was high. I could be smart when I was high. I could hold a really intelligent conversation when God knows if any of those things actually happened.
Yeah.
But for me, it was like, oh my God, I feel like I am now the person that I want to be. I felt like I was myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Thankfully, the tables have turned.
Yeah.
So I'm wincing and I'm like, yeah, I get it.
And it was just, I was like, man, I'm going to do this all the time.
Every day I'm going to be myself.
No wonder they didn't want me to do this. Like, I'm really good at this. And yeah, I was terrible at it. But yeah, I was like falling all over myself and, falling in the trees and,
And it just never stopped. Like, it just was like those tall boys, and then...
I remember waking up the next morning and just being like, holy shit, I figured it out. This is what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. I found my thing, and Oh,
Whoa.
God, what an idiot. Yeah. No, I mean, I still remember all this shit incredibly vividly.
And then 2 years later, you're on a bus going, I think I might be an alcoholic.
Yeah.
That's
I
high
was
school
like,
too, so you're not even age yet. Right?
well, I left high school after sophomore year and started a college level program in Massachusetts. So it was that, one of these things that I've sort of like taken advantage of and suffered from through most of my life is being the sort of mannish boy, that I was huge when I was very young and also stayed very immature right up until, well, right about now.
We're here to change you. Did you know?
Oh God. I hope
Just
you
wait a little bit longer.
I hope you brought reinforcements.
We're taking you to an ashram.
Good luck. There's always been that combination of like, I was sort of living in this adult world of being out of college and having, sort of hardcore, a hardcore academic life, hardcore intellectual life, and then also like, at night just drinking cough syrup and like, crazy bonfires in the woods and just shoplifting and doing all sorts of stupid shit and acting like, not like we were 15 or 16 or 17, but like we were 9, and so there's always been sort of that duality. But I mean, it's funny. I like at this point in my life, I'm okay with it. I mean, whenever I get pulled over, I always just tell the cop, I've been sober for, well, now it's like almost 9 years. And cops are always like, you sure? Because I don't, because if I'm on the road or sleeping in the van or whatever, I don't look like what people think a sober person is supposed to look like, of like clean cut, well scrubbed, well groomed. I'm not just okay with that now. I'm happy with that. One of the things that I'm really proud of with my sister's kids is that I can actually show them like a good role model, that like it's okay to be the weird uncle. You can drive a van that looks like the van from Scooby-Doo without,
It's totally Mystery Machine.
without being Jeff Spicoli. And it's good to be strong, but being strong means going out and running 20 miles or helping with the chores. It doesn't mean cutting down women, and it doesn't, and that, I don't know, that I guess that there's a different way to be a man other than like, watching sports and drinking beer and eating Cheetos and stuff like that. That it's okay to be a man, but to be a man doesn't mean that that you're a pig or a shithead or
Yeah, and so to me, sitting around watching football and eating wings and all this stuff, like to me, that's not a man.
yeah,
like
exactly.
To me, my husband's a man, like one of the best Ironman triathletes in the country, and plant-based, and he does yoga and he meditates. Like to me, that is a man, like somebody who is willing to be vulnerable, to put it out there and say, I'm willing to try these things, and then you realize that, damn, it makes you feel good, and if it makes you feel good, you stay with it.
You want more of it,
and it goes right kind of with like the idea of, eating plants versus eating meat. Like there's nothing manly to me about throwing a piece of meat on the grill when somebody else did the dirty work for you.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm outspoken about gun control. I'm a big proponent of gun control. And I have friends and fans who are like, all about guns. And I'm always like, if you're so freaking tough, why do you need a gun?
Exactly.
A real man wouldn't need a gun,
right. Because a gun's not going to, I'm not saying the gun, the object, but how you're going to use the gun, like that's never going to create a peaceful environment. It's never going to create a peaceful community. So what do you want to see? What do you want to see in the world?
A friend of mine got it right. He said, one day we're finally all going to kill each other, and then the guns can live in peace.
That's perfect. All right. So what got you sober?
Nothing horrible. No,
I've heard that before.
no big bad thing.
Like it wasn't like this crazy thing. Like
didn't.
sometimes people are just like, I just woke up and was like, I'm done.
Yeah. No, I didn't. I didn't, kill a family driving drunk
Oh my God, thank God.
Lose my career. I never had a career. I just finally realized that I finally saw the narrowing of the aperture, that as a young man, my life that there were sort of like infinite possibilities of who I could be and what I could do and the things I could do with my life. And then at 32, that had kind of narrowed to a pinprick where I'd gotten fired. I couldn't even get a job like working in a bar anymore, and they put up with a lot of shit in bars in New York. But I was, picking stuff up off the free section on Craigslist and then selling it on the furniture section or whatever, and just a bottom feeder. And I was like, man, I moved to New York, with dreams, and they were, granted they were, shallow or arrogant or unrealistic dreams, but I had a dream, and now my dream is that when I'm riding my bike one day, I'll get hit by somebody with a really expensive car, and then I'll get a large settlement and be wheelchair bound for the rest of my short life, but have enough money to pay the bills.
It's really inspiring.
That was my financial plan for the future, sitting in a wheelchair, my arms raised in triumph, my legs just a shattered mess,
It's like the guy in Office Space. Did you ever see that movie where the guy gets like hit by a car and he's like,
he backs up out of his driveway. He's going to kill himself. He backs out of the driveway and he gets hit.
Yeah. And he's literally like a head. Like he's left with a head, but he's like, I have a huge settlement. And he's like, he's like so excited. And he has a huge party.
He does.
That's
Milton.
Man, that's no way to live. But yeah, I just finally woke up with, to it one day. I was like, my life is small and it's just going to keep getting smaller and smaller. And I had done everything I could to drink myself to death and failed at that. And I was like, man, it looks like I'm going to be stuck here for a long time. It might be time for me to figure out how to live.
And you got sober without like the assistance of AA, or how did you do that on your own? You have a really strong will.
Yes, I'm really stubborn, and that was, it's been a huge obstacle in my life. But one of the things I talk about with people is use the skill set you acquire as an alcoholic to get you out of that hole. The same things of that. No, I will continue to drink. Well, you have to use that stubborn will to say no, nothing but nothing will make me drink now, So yeah, I came home from 2.5-week tour of England with my band, and I was just exhausted, and I was just like, this is it, it's done. And I'd been a huge problem for my bandmates on tour, they were pulling me out of hedges and shit like that. And listen, I wasn't at the bottle and a half of vodka every day that some alcoholics get to, where you do need medical assistance. I felt like garbage for, a week or 10 days. And then I was like panic attacks and depression and shit like that.
Because now you're feeling everything that you had been covering up since you were 15 years old.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I think people, you hear oh, he's sober now, that's so great. It's like, yeah, but that's where the work really starts. You're not drinking anymore, but now you got to deal with all those demons that have been drunk for so many years.
Well, and this is one of the things that I wanted to bring up too when I saw the license plate on your car, and we were talking about anger and frustration and whatnot, and one of the things, talking about sobriety and talking about recovery and talking about sort of mental health and physical health, I always try to complicate the sort of two-dimensional stuff that we often encounter in writing, in movies, in social media. One of the things that I encourage everybody to do, particularly people in recovery, particularly women, is to do combat sports. I was boxing and kickboxing, and I told my sister, I was like, you've got to do this. It's so good for you. And she was like, Mishka, I'm a mom. I don't kickbox. I don't do that shit. And I was like, no, you need to. And then she started doing martial arts, and she's a badass. And, they had a competition one day to see who could sort of, kick over the one, punching bag. And it was like her husband and one other guy in the class who could do it, and I love yoga, but what I get out of yoga is relief from injuries and from, back pain and stuff like that. I rarely get the sort of mental relief or clarity or focus that other people get. I get that from boxing. I get that from kickboxing. I really feel like, I got dumped one time, and drove straight to the gym, and I did 10 rounds on the heavy bag, and I walked out, and my lips were blue from hypoxia, and I walked out, and I was okay. And I just, went home and ate and slept, and I woke up the next morning, and I was like, okay, I'm all right. It is like the Vitamix for your negative emotions. You just churn it up and blow it out. And I think that a lot of people think that, I'll eat vegan and I'll go to yoga and then I'll be okay. And for some people that works, but if it's not working for you, then it's not working for you. And maybe you need to try the exact opposite thing. For me, it's not about squashing my negative feelings of, depression or anxiety or resentment or anger or whatever. For me, it's about expressing it, and to go and kick the shit out of the bag. Or my sparring partner in New York, his name was Bill W., which is perfect because I'm not a fan of AA, and I would be like fighting Bill W. every day. And I'm I don't see him very often anymore, but I'm sort of closer to him than people I've known for a lot longer, because he and I had that sort of intimate relationship of being sparring partners, knowing that okay, we're going to get together now, and we're going to train, obviously, and we're going to do the physical stuff, but then also I'm going to beat you up and you're going to beat me up. And at the end of this, we're both going to feel better,
Yeah. The body is an amazing filtering machine. And I absolutely agree that getting out there, and I'm actually working with somebody who calls me often, who's trying to not drink so much anymore. Uh-huh. Really, really functional too. Really, really
That's
functional.
The worst.
Oh, really functional. But this person is, going to Muay Thai, and just sometimes it's twice a day, and it's just and I say to this person, I'm like, you go in there and you beat the absolute shit out of whatever you're beating up. Get it out, get it out, get it out. It is so important. So,
because if you don't, you take it out on your partner, you take it out on your
God.
family. Anger is a normal thing. Don't and people will hate themselves for getting angry or feeling angry. Right? No, man, we're human beings.
Right.
Particularly this modern world,
if you let it fester,
yes, then
hello cancer. This
it
stuff
totally
will
poisons you
into something horrible. And, I say that when I first started doing triathlons, I would say I've already written a chapter called Swimming with Fists, because that's how I would swim. Because I was that total asshole out there. This little 5'1" person was it was my punching bag was get out of my way, get out of my way. And it felt good. I'm not recommending this for anyone. This is not a nice way to compete. But for me, it was I started to realize that through these endurance sports, that I could start to filter out what I didn't know how to filter out before.
Yeah.
And start to process it. So the body is amazing machine in that way. You were going to say something.
I was just gonna say, is ultra running the same? Has been the same avenue for you? Has it been?
No, totally
new
different.
perspective, yeah.
Totally different. I found when if I'm doing sprint workouts or boxing or kickboxing
It's
or
like high intensity,
short
short,
runs,
yeah.
that's when you blow out the negative emotions. But if I'm going out for 15, 20 miles, you can be angry for 4 miles, but it's harder to be angry for 20 miles. And what do you have left after the anger, And for me, it was like love, I love my family. I love my girlfriend, I love my friends. And a lot of times it's like anger and negativity and resentment and, the bad emotions that'll get me out the door and that'll, get me to lace up my shoes and go, I don't like running. I need it. And I don't like it. It would take negativity to like get me out the door. But then when I was out there, that's when I think about my mom or I think about my sisters and, think like, man, I'm so lucky, or man, I really owe her an apology, or, and that was I think about the shit that my mom put up with when I was a kid and think about like, well, if she could be strong for us then I can do this now. We're doing a challenge this month. My buddy, Mo Alexander, he signed up to do 5,000 sit-ups with me. Mo's 400 pounds, big boy. If Mo can do it, fuck,
So
man,
how
I
long is that?
can do
How is that a
it.
day?
It's 162
What?
a day.
Did you do them already?
I did this is how I do shit. The first day I just like blasted out 200, and now I have like a bloody chafe mark on my tailbone, like because I didn't.
You were like, I'm going to bank an extra
Yeah.
40.
And
I love it.
so now it's like I have to do like 10 here and 10 there and stuff, and like I have to do crunches instead of sit-ups because I was like just bleeding last night, but it's not that many. People in your day, you have 5 minutes here and 5 minutes. I mean, particularly me, I either work at home or, I did it on the hotel floor this morning, and I'll do another 100 with the kids.
That's what you got to do. Like, we're doing a plank challenge with our athletes right now, and we haven't done our planks yet, but so it's telling.
Yeah, we're planking. So for the month of January, we're doing the amount of time it is for the day. So today's January 4th, so we have to. So
we're still pretty good,
planks.
4 minutes, but when we get to like
1 4-minute planks, or
you
4?
go to where you can go.
Oh, okay.
And then,
All right.
yeah, so when you get to 31,
That's awesome.
31 minutes of planking. So when it's all said and done, that's over 8 hours in the month of January of planking.
That's brutal.
And we did 3 minutes. I've never thought I could do, but it's the mental side of things.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how long you've planked, but I planked maybe for a minute and a half at most.
Yep.
But we did 3 minutes
you're like,
last
that's
night.
good. That's good. Minute and a half. That's good.
Yeah.
But yeah,
now,
3 minutes.
and tonight's going to be 4.
Tonight's going to be 4 minutes.
But you try to see, like.
And of course, we have this athlete that's like, I already did my 4 minutes. We're like, all at once. She's like, yeah. We're like, great. That means we have to do it all at once.
I'm all about the challenges because whatever you need, you're going to find there. Whether it's somebody who's like, oh yeah, I did 6 minutes today. And you're like, God damn it. All right, I'm going to do it. Or somebody who is like, I couldn't do it today. I tried and I couldn't do it. I'm going to try again tomorrow, but I couldn't do it today. And you need both of those people.
Yeah,
totally.
Or the person who's like, man, I love this challenge. Or the person who's like, I hate your guts for roping me into this.
Right.
And like, we're social animals. We need each other. Don't deny it. Lean into it, and just drag your friends in to do stupid shit with you.
Which is what you did in the month of November.
Yeah, God.
You did a writing challenge, and I was a part of that. And there were so many nights where I had every excuse in the book not to write. Like, I was in New York City at the time, and I think I thought you were still living in New York at the time. And anyway, I was in this training and it was like all day, like 8 to whatever, 7:30 at night. And then I was just exhausted. It was all information all day long. And then it would be like 9 o'clock at night and I was just so tired. I'm like, you know what? Show up. Like just show up. It doesn't matter how, just show up, turn the Wi-Fi off and write something and then post it on the Facebook group. Like post it. Like that's all you have to do and do it. And it was the accountability is so massive.
Yeah.
How did you, well, okay, two things. First, what I think is really funny is that I think you were writing this, but like as life gets better, right? Like as you kind of like clean up, like now you've got this wonderful girlfriend and you're sober and you're touring and blah, blah, blah. Like writing gets a lot harder. Like when you're angry and you're sad and you're like peeing in the bed, writing's a little bit easier.
Yeah. I failed that challenge.
Yeah, that was my second question is how did it go for you?
I tried to be honest about it.
Why do you think you failed it? Why do you say you failed it?
Well, okay, I mean, failure is a loaded word. I engaged the challenge. I took it on. It's not a failure. I didn't meet the challenge. I didn't succeed. I didn't complete it. I published 6 Kindle singles and a full-length memoir that's basically 3 books worth of memoir in like 5 years. I'm out of shit, and it's a great place to be. I got my revenge on the people I had to get revenge on. My lifelong nemesis died a couple of years ago. I sort of like sorted a lot of shit out with my dad, sorted shit out with my family. I, sorted most of the stuff out, old lovers. And there are few things now, the only thing that's preventing me from sleeping at night right now is the second coffee that I had after lunch, which is not to say my life is good or my life is perfect or my life is easy, but I just don't, I have the biggest problem that I have right now is that I don't have like one big, well-defined problem,
Yeah, like you're out of shit. Like the shit in your life is gone. So now what do you write about? And I think, like you said, it's a good place to be. There were some times during that month where, and I know you can relate to this, where I would like open the computer and I'd be like, all right, 5 breaths, get into the present moment. That's where creativity happens. And I do the 5 breaths. And it was like I just like slammed the brakes on or something. Like my head would hurt. Like there was like, it was like something was inserted into my brain and there was just nothing. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I deal with this a lot with my students, that, we're good at defeating ourselves, so a lot of times you have to sneak up on shit. So much of my writing happens while I'm running.
Oh, just thinking that same thing.
You're occupied. So you're doing a thing. So it's sort of like, okay, I can relax a little bit. I'm doing a thing.
But you're clear too. You can be clear.
You're physically focused on the task at hand.
You're present.
But your brain is just spinning. And people are like, oh, you don't listen to podcasts? You don't listen to music or what? No, man. It's just like, just me out there, whether it means I figure out what happens in this song or figuring out a personal conflict in my life or what happens next in this story or whatever, that's when I go out there and just sort of like let my mind just let it run.
But like, okay, so that's happened to me. And meditation. So I meditate every day and so much stuff comes in during meditation and you're like, oh, I got to write this down. So do you just trust that it's going to come back? Do you go right from the run to the computer or?
I talk into my phone a lot or I'll write notes or stuff like that.
Yeah, that's what I got to start doing is talking into the phone.
Another thing is, people, well, I'm going to go 2 ways with this. One, people are hounding me to, oh, you got to write the next book, the next story. You got to write fiction. You got to write this. No, man, I got to do whatever I want to do. Right now, what I want to do is I want to write songs. I want to write dick jokes to say in between the songs. I want it like, I've been touring with a lot of comics. I've been doing a lot more sort of stand-up shit, and that's been rewarding for me, So like the writing that I'm doing right now is been writing a lot of jokes, and I've been writing a lot of songs. I've just finished a new record that'll be coming out next year. I've already written sort of half of the next record. That counts. That is writing, comedy is art. Even if it's just dick jokes. And my music is valid, and it's incredibly meaningful to me, and it's what I want to do right now. The other thing is, man, I've been so lucky that my writing has been financially remunerative. I'm lucky that I got a book deal. I'm lucky that my book came out. Wish it had sold a little more. Wish a few more people had read it, but it's cool. I got to write it. I got paid for it. I've been very, super successful publishing with Amazon. I'm being indebted to them forever. You pass the mic, man. Like it's time for somebody else to tell their story, to write their story. And I wrote about David Sedaris. I love David Sedaris. I think he's an incredibly talented writer. I love his mind, his, as a writer, he's someone I look to again and again about, how would he, navigate this terrain. He's a rich, famous writer now, and I wish he would stop. I know what you're saying. Yeah. His problems are not as compelling to me now as they once were. Mm-hmm. And also he's got to let the next David Sedaris, there's a finite amount of attention, which is not to say that, people shouldn't write. He can write as much as he wants. Tell all the goddamn stories if you want to. But,
it's kind of like I'm getting this visual of like a face cloth, and you're just like wringing it out. Like, is there any more? Can I wring anything more out of this?
Yeah, I'm not gonna write the longer run or the long run too. Return to long run. Fuck that, man. No, I mean, hopefully I only have to get sober once in my life. And this is the thing too. Is when I was a kid, I was like, someday I'm gonna write a book. One book. I did 3 books worth of material. My writing hand is tired,
But you're shifting, like you're shifting into like this new kind of genre, like comedy and things like that. And that's gonna, I think even just shifting into that, it's still writing, but you're gonna it's fresh and it's new and have fun with it, because maybe it stays, maybe it sticks, or maybe it's just, kind of what do they say when you break up with somebody and then the rebound? Maybe it's just like your rebound art right now, and then something else is coming. It doesn't matter. You just go with it. Don't resist it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when I was writing my book, I Swear I'll Make It Up to You, I would find myself, I would be like, I'm going to write all day. And I would write for like 2 hours, and I'd be like, fuck, I can't write anymore. Like, my brain's exhausted. Then I would go and like fix guitars. And because your brain never rests, it's always going. But for me to shift from words to, do I need to increase the value of this potentiometer? Will that make this pickup sound bigger or brighter or louder or whatever? To shift that focus to something else, then I could stop banging my head against the wall with a particular passage. And then that's when it would come to me. You
got to walk away. Like when you're like, I've got to stop, or you hit that resistance, it's the sure sign. I don't think there's any need to fight through it. Just walk away and let it come.
And not walk away and turn on the TV. Like walk away and do the dishes or fold your laundry, or, you know what I mean? Do something like that where you're occupied, where you're still busy. Man, we don't need to have the radio going the entire time. The radio, the iPod, sometimes it's okay to just.
I know. Yeah. I've gotten to a point where poor PJ, like I'll be trying to write like one sentence and he'll put something on. I'm like, that has to go off. Like I can't have any kind of competing. I just want silence. I just want silence so that the words can come. Like it doesn't even matter if it's just like a handwritten note in a book that I'm sending out, or if I'm writing, you know, an article or whatever it is. I just like that silence. And then when I hit that wall, it's like, go walk the dog.
Yeah.
And come back.
Dogs. It's all about dogs.
Do you have a dog?
No, I think it's my greatest personal failing right now is that I don't have a dog. But I think that, you know, dogs are a tremendous source of comfort for us.
Oh my God. We call Clark the joy creator. There's a picture of him in the back of the book, and he's just the joy creator. The other day I was down at the beach, and there was these guys walking down the sidewalk, and they had like the hats on backwards and like jeans with no shirts, but they're all tattooed. They just like angry and just like rough. And here I am with Clark. He's a golden retriever, and I'm at the corner, and they come up, and all of a sudden these three like dudes are just like on their knees, like, oh my God, like their voices are all like high pitched and everything. Yep. And I said, he'll make anybody go soft. And this guy looks at me, and he takes off his sunglasses, and he goes, I was so angry. I was so angry, and I'm not angry anymore. And I'm like, he's the joy creator. He's the joy creator, you guys. Like, I swear they were like druggies or something. They were definitely had like I wouldn't want to meet them in an alley and, you know, in the middle of nowhere, but he will just bring you like right into this softness and into this now and into this trust. And also what I've been feeling from him lately is just this abundance. Like he always has everything he needs. There's never a lack with him. Yeah. And that's how dogs are. They're amazing. They're amazing. All right, we're starting to lose our light in the van. I love it. This is awesome. This is the first podcast I've done in a van, the Mystery Machine. It's rad though.
Out in the hills.
Do you have a van back in Atlanta too?
Yeah,
Didn't you have like a sweet Previa?
I still got it. A little soccer mom minivan, 1993.
That's a unique design.
Oh, don't get me. We could do a whole podcast just about those vans. I'm a huge fan of them. People are like, oh, you got to get rid of this van. I'm like, look at these 7 fan sites devoted just to this van. This is a miracle of modern engineering.
This is a very unique design.
A
lot of R&D went into that.
Yes,
it's a
absolutely.
gem.
No, they're amazing vehicles. And I'm so conflicted right now because it's getting to a point where it's like a $4 gasket will fail and it's deep within the engine, so it's going to be $250 of labor to get in there to replace the. And so I'm like, do I get rid of it and get something else, or do I? And it's so, and I'm really, I'm really deeply connected to it.
That's when you just got to walk away and go for a run and wait for the answer.
Yeah, I don't know. I've been waiting for a while, but I mean, I have this, crazy van. I mean, driving this van, it's like driving an abandoned whorehouse from the second story window. It's like what happened in here? Like,
it's definitely a climate changer.
I do not want to see the forensic files on this.
Yeah,
I'm
glad I didn't bring my black, like the black light.
But my other van is totally incognito. I can just sort of like I just cruise. It draws no heat from cops or something. They're like oh, look at that deranged madman in the Toyota, soccer mom minivan.
Right. But this one
yes, this is like.
Well, especially since your name is on the the back.
Pull me over.
Totally.
Let's Google this guy.
All right, Mishka. There's so much like people can just soak up about you. Your book's amazing. Definitely go buy the book. I Swear I'll Make It Up to You by Mishka Shubaly. Big hit. Bestseller. No, it's a great book. It's absolutely amazing. Also, the long run on Kindle single, and you've got what, 4 others?
5 other Kindle singles. I've got a bunch of music up on Amazon, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, all that stuff.
Oh, yeah. So, are you touring soon, or?
Yeah. We're out here for a couple more days, then go back to Atlanta for a couple of days. Then I've got 10 days in Colorado. Then I'm doing Georgia, Florida, Louisiana, Tennessee, Arkansas, Texas, and then in March, Washington, Oregon, California, Nevada.
Nice.
So yeah.
So you'll be on the road for a while.
Where in Colorado?
I'm going to be Fort Collins, Boulder, Denver, Colorado Springs, and a show in Laramie.
Sweet. Well,
Do
we've
a
got a
little
bunch of
shout out.
Colorado
Yeah.
people that listen, so you guys go check out Mishka.
Awesome.
And how would people connect with you?
All my tour dates and stuff are up at mishkashubaly.com. I'm at Mishka Shubaly on Twitter and Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I
Post some pretty engaging pictures.
try. It's been mostly van porn for the last
Van
week. 'cause
porn, sometimes there's body parts.
Yes.
And
Sometimes
I
sweet potato.
think that's going to get more interesting now that you're over 40, because at almost
Yeah.
46, I can tell you that shit goes down.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, man. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you making the time for us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks for coming over to the van.
To the van. Not everybody's going to be able to say that. It's a
Yeah.
that's exclusivity right there. Mishka is the man, right? Hope you guys loved today's episode as much as we loved recording it and sending it out into the podcast abyss. Make sure to check out the show notes for ways to connect with Mishka and the multitude of ways to support the show. We are so grateful every time you choose to listen in. One of the greatest things you can do is subscribe on Apple Podcast. One little clicky click and the show gets a boost. So that's it, straight up. If we want to make change in our lives, we must stay committed to the work. And how do we do that? Oh my gosh, it is so simple. Show up. Show up every day for your highest good. Question everything about negative thought patterns, belief systems, and behaviors. This is the warrior path, people. Waking up is no joke, but I can tell you this community is a potent pod of people who are showing up not only for themselves, but for the greater good. And this, my friends, is what the world is crying out for. More people who are willing to live the awake and ready life.